So the Supreme Court has returned a verdict that IEBC deployed election technology that, in the court's view, met the standards of integrity, and even though there were gaps, they were not enough to upset the election outcome that puts William Ruto on the path of presidency in a week's time. So the court was last week treated to spirited allegations by petitioners that the election technology was marred with interference that included results declaration forms being intercepted before landing on the IEBC portal. Chief Justice Martha Koome cited some of the allegations as mere hot air and not worth the court's time, saying that the evidence presented was not persuasive enough. Sam Gituku has that verdict.
Now, the Supreme Court had condensed the 7 petitions into 9 issues, 3 of those related to the election technology and the results transmission system. The first one was on whether the technology deployed by the IEBC for the conduct of the 2022 general election met the standards of integrity, verifiability, security, and transparency to guarantee accurate and verifiable results.
We are not persuaded by the allegation that the technology deployed by IEBC failed the standard of Article 86A of the Constitution on integrity, verifiability, security, and transparency.
IEBC's Kenya Integrated Election Management System, abbreviated as KIEMS, had been challenged by the petitioners as having failed on the day of election. But after considering the evidence presented before it, the Supreme Court agreed with IEBC that given that only 235 polling stations had their KIEMS kits failing, and that over 86,000 voters were manually identified and allowed to vote in those areas, there was no evidence of voter frustration.
86,889 voters were granted the right to vote manually, and the requisite forms 32A were duly filed. This happened successfully in Kibwezi West constituency and parts of Kakamega County.
Petitioner Khalef Khalifa and others had claimed that IEBC bungled the election by failing to make public a voter register audit report by KPMG, claiming that the commission went into the election with a voter's roll that could not be termed as credible. The judges saying they were satisfied with IEBC's explanation.
And we are satisfied that the inconsistencies and inaccuracies identified during the audit were somewhat successfully addressed.
Now, key component of the election technology for the presidential election was the results transmission system and the verification procedures. The court had set out to determine whether there was interference with the uploading and transmission of Forms 34A from the polling stations to the IEBC portal.
No credible evidence was presented to prove that anyone accessed the RTS to intercept, detain, or store Forms 34A temporarily before they were uploaded to the public portal.
The court had been told that some 11,000 forms had been intercepted, edited, and deposited onto the IEBC portal in a span of 9 minutes. Part of the evidence was an affidavit of IEBC Commissioner Justice Nyangaya that contained supposed access logs.
It turned out that the transmission logs produced in the affidavit of Justice Nyangaya were of no probative value. The registrar's report shows that the original Forms 34A from the contested polling stations, which were allegedly intercepted, were exactly the same as those on the public portal and the certified copies that were presented to this court.
The court was satisfied that the results transmission system was secure enough, stating that some of the evidence presented in court was forged.
A review of some of the logs presented as evidence of staging showed that they were either from logs arising from the 2017 presidential election or were outright forgeries. In our considered view, there was no evidence of a man-in-the-middle server configured to the IEBC's VPN network, and no evidence was produced to show that the chairperson of IEBC and staff were part of the arranged conspiracy.
The third issue relating to that was whether there was a difference between Forms 34A uploaded on the IEBC public portal and the forms received at the National Tallying Center, and comparing the same to Forms 34A issued to the agents at the polling stations.
There were no significant differences captured between the Forms 34A uploaded on the public portal and the physical Forms 34A delivered to Bomas that would have affected the overall outcome of the presidential election.
The court took issue with evidence presented before it by some of the petitioners, terming them sensational and forged.
The affidavits of Celestine Opio and Arnold Ochieng Oginga, while containing sensational information, were not credible, as the registrar's report confirmed that all the Forms 34A attached to those affidavits and purportedly given to them by the agents at select polling stations were significantly different from the originals, certified copies, and those on the public portal.
On the last day of the petitions hearing last Friday, Raila Odinga's lawyer Julius Soweto presented a Form 34A from Gasharaigu Primary School, a polling station in Murang'a County, a form that showed the name Jose Camargo, which IEBC termed as a form captured on top of another document.
Jose Camargo, this is the person who decided the president-elect of the country.
This also turned out to be no more than hot air, and we were taken on a wild goose chase that yielded nothing of probative value.
Soweto's final day attempt to convince the court also involved two Kim's kits that shared a serial number. Odinga's counsel cited them for plots to manipulate the election.
We are also satisfied that the two kits and other identifying features that were markedly different, including the timestamps and polling code, and therefore nothing turns on this anomaly.
The Clean Bill of Health verdict on IEBC election technology by the Supreme Court now vindicates the commission that had been under sustained scrutiny in the weeks before the election, with its engagement of Dutch firm Smartmatic Company, whose staff involved Venezuelan citizens